Hey, well, welcome to an Insight Line edition. I love that I can throw the edition word on there. It just sounds like the Nightline kind of talk. If you're old enough to remember Nightline, we are the Insight Line edition. Today on the Insight Line of the ARC Path, we are going to just kind of highlight and invite you to recognize that enemies exist and they're not the problem. In fact, the more we focus on the problem, the more problems we're going to encounter. So we're going to focus on love. And not just this flowery, simple, oh, we're going to love everybody and everything. We're going to get into the weeds and really wrestle with what does it look like to love our enemies. And as I share that concept of what the Insight Line is about today, I want to invite you to recognize that loving our enemies is ours. It's our choice. It's our opportunity. It's ours to own the responsibility to say, I get to choose. There are circumstances, there are challenges, there are crises, there are individuals in the world that are going to challenge you. However, they are there for you. They are a gift. They are an opportunity for you to recognize this is a growing place. This is a growing pain. And in that element, that growth is a choice for you and I to recognize that there's a better version of me, and I get the opportunity to step into that. On ARC, we say this is a lifestyle path of better choices. And what better way to make a better choice than to experience or encounter something that feels like an enemy and then to find a new way forward, to overcome it, to engage it, to celebrate it, and to recognize that it has been a gift for me. So today, as we dig in to love our enemies, we are going to focus on both what do enemies look like, where do they come from, how do we know an enemy is an enemy. I'm going to talk about another word a little later about being a villain versus an enemy. We just did an amazing podcast on are you the hero or the villain of the story? And there are villains in every great story. If there was no villain, then the hero wouldn't really be so important. But on the Insight Line, I want to invite you to recognize your role as the hero is to move in love. But that's not to get rid of the enemies of your life. In fact, the more you stand up and declare who you are, what you believe, and what you stand for, the more likely you are going to find new enemies. Let's think about that. There are enemies just waiting to come after you, but you don't know that yet, and they don't know you yet. So what I want to do is I want to take a breath from solving anything and I want to jump into a discussion. I'm going to invite a friend on that I have watched him navigate life for decades, in fact. And there have been seasons where both of us have been places where we have felt truly loved. And then in that same motion, something happened in our lives, and the person that we thought was, in this term, somebody who loved us became somebody who hated us. Whether or not the hate was from them or the hate was just a situation between us, it felt more like an enemy than a friend. And so as I bring Eldon on to join us today, I'm going to just give you an insight to the word of enemy. So studio, you're welcome to bring Eldon in and we'll get to know Eldon and who he is. The word enemy is actually based on the word friend, but it's the anti-friend is really what an enemy is. It's somebody who's not a friend. So in the root of that word, it's a kind of a French and Latin word mixed together. I just had fun looking that up and saying, okay, where did this word come from? You can't have enemies if you don't have friends. And you can't have friends if you don't have enemies. Now, some people go, nope, I don't have any enemies. Yes, you do. You've just blocked them out or silenced them in a way that they're not a part of your life. And really what today I'm going to invite you to do is lower that wall and let the enemies come in. Let them come in and show up and figure out how to navigate these relationships because they're really there for you. So enough from me. Eldon Stevenson, thank you for joining me today. Eldon, introduce yourself just a little bit. What do people want to know about you before we jump into this conversation?
Wow. Thanks, Casey. Yeah, we've known each other for years, man, years and years, like you said, decades, and have been very real and transparent with each other, which has allowed us to see this. For those who don't know me, Canadian, married 30 years this year, have four daughters. This month I'll have my 10th grandchild. Have lived in Southern California for 14 years Just recently came back out of Canada and am currently residing with one of my daughters and her family in Utah. And I'm working on my master's in counseling. And that actually was, again, kind of going through not only my own stuff, but helping other people go through their stuff. And so this, as you know, is something that I have probably been journeying with and working through probably over 8 years, if not 10 years kind of thing. So I'm looking
Absolutely.
forward to this
To
discussion.
give somebody else the history of Eldon and I met. We were, uh, I would guess in our early 20s, somewhere in that realm. And
Mm-hmm.
as youth pastors, we were in charge of guiding America's young minds down a path of enlightenment and in coming into a spiritual revelation. But we were probably more fascinated with dodgeball, burping, farting, and staying up all night, and that's really what made us excellent youth pastors. So that's where we started in our journey, and yet we have not stopped learning. Eldon just shared with you he's in a pursuit of his master's because he has a desire, at least as he shared with me. I'm not done engaging with people, and I want to be better resourced, better equipped, and prepared to get into the trenches of people's lives and to guide them forward. So, Eldon, today we're talking about loving our enemies. And do you have any enemies? Let's just start there.
Yeah, yeah. I think, like you said, it'd be foolish to realize that you don't. You have ones you know, and you have ones that you haven't even met yet. You know, and that's not just in your own circle. That's like you look at just the conflicts around the world. I think it'd be very naive to assume that you are liked or loved by everybody.
Absolutely. So let's back out, just kind of take a bigger lens from enemies. Um, you've got years of relationships, and now you're pursuing your master's in that sense to go deeper into relationships. What have you? How could you kind of gloss it in the sense of, we have a mutual affirmation from the concepts that come from the biblical teaching of Jesus to love our enemies, to pray for those who persecute us, and by stepping into this, we're changing the way we engage with relationships. That really is the foundational concept. In the ARC path, we're talking about mindset, we're talking about community, we're talking about lifestyle, and the crossroad today is loving our enemies. So, what do you know about relationships today that you've learned the hard way?
Wow. Okay. That's a great question in the sense that I think you can't love your enemies until you love the things that you hate about yourself. What I mean by that is whenever I find someone who I want to keep at arm's length, that I struggle with wanting to accept into my circle, it's usually because they have something in them or that I see in them that I don't like about myself. Maybe it's tardiness, maybe it's unorganization. And the term that I use is if I spot it, usually means I've got it. And so I have
Mm.
to come to terms with what that is within me as opposed to just being frustrated with the other person.
Okay, I'm going to
Because,
pause you there and give that back because that was gold. I'm going to tie it to what you first were talking about, the fact that when I keep people at a distance, it's because I'm actually putting a wall up. And yet, if I spot something in them that I don't like or that's a problem, you're recognizing that if I spot it, I got it. And so you're owning the very thing that is causing the dissonance or the distance, the desire to push them away is actually already living inside of you. Did I capture the spot it, got it concept?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And some people may push back and go, well, I don't have, say, betrayal in my life, or I don't have, whatever term, or I don't have that. What another key in that is hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, great
And so
concept,
if
great
you,
book.
yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, we
And so
live
if
it
you,
out, don't we?
yeah, exactly. And it's when you realize that you're also guilty of hurting people that you can have the empathy, the compassion, even the sympathy to extend that olive branch, going, you know what? I once was hurt, or I once pushed people down to elevate myself up. And you can approach the conflict as opposed to adversaries as compadres, where you're working at it going, this is how I overcame it, or I did that to you, and I'm apologizing for that, and I know that you reciprocated that hurt back, and I understand that. And
Mm.
a lot of times when people, oh, you want me to stop?
No, no. Well, I wanted, as you were talking about that, I was just trying to envision somebody else that's listening to this going, yeah, but you don't know my enemy. You don't know what they did
True.
to me. You don't know how much I've been hurt. And so those are kind of the thinkings that I was thinking. What about that, Eldon? Are you talking about we have to put our arms around these people that hurt us?
Well, let me clarify that. I would encourage that being the end goal, but some people remain to be unsafe. But it's not to say that you dismiss them. You have to recognize what it is that makes them unsafe, so that you can again healthily keep healthy boundaries in relationships that can be
Mm,
very painful and hurtful. But it's recognizing that it's like this: if people act in a certain way, let's say I go up to you and I say, "Hey, Casey," and I give you a slap on the back and you flip out. And I'm like, "Whoa," and you rip a strip off of me going, "Why don't you announce yourself?" And you just go off and your behavior is completely like, "What?" And immediately as your friend, I'm like, "That's not the Casey I know." And so rather than go, "Screw you, Casey, you're a jerk, I'm out," if I come around and say, "Hey, what's going on? Why are you treating me this way?" And then we bring it down where now we're not conflict, we're coming together to solve the problem together. And you tell me, "Oh, I was at the beach and I got a sunburn, and when you hit my sunburn, it launched me." All of a sudden it helps me understand, "Oh, that's where you're hurting."
yeah.
And I hit you where you're hurting, not intentionally. Now if someone keeps coming back and smacking your sunburn, then that person's unhealthy, right?
And
That person's got deep
and that can be a
issues.
key way of recognizing how are we going to lower this resistance to being in relationship. How do we keep healthy boundaries? We're going to talk more about healthy boundaries as we keep going forward. Natanya, thank you for dropping that question in. We're going to hit it because this becomes a reality that if I love how you said, if somebody keeps hitting you on the back after they know you've got a sunburn, you got to look at them and go, dude, I need to keep my distance from you because obviously you're not a safe person. I love how you dropped that one in there too. There's a difference between a safe person and somebody who's not a safe person. And loving your enemy doesn't mean inviting them into your living room.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
there
Yeah.
is a reality here of recognizing your choice and figuring out, okay, who am I? This is self-awareness. Who are they? This is where you're stepping into acknowledging, I am not you, you're not me. I love how you kind of the spot it, got it helps you recognize, is that you or is that me? I
Hmm.
acknowledge that what I don't like about you might be living in me. And then I've got to work on my own healing and restoration before I can step into a kingdom lens. If you weren't paying attention, I just walked you through the arc path, through the conversation that Eldon and I were having, is that this is a process. Eldon, talk to me just another minute or so about where you're at in your process of the redemption and the return to love.
Wow. Yeah. So I think for me, one of the things that realizing that I have to love myself, recognize that I'm still in a process of growing, recognizing that I'm a hurt person that has hurt people, and be gracious with those who hurt me. But also recognizing too that whether someone criticizes us or not, or puts us down to elevate themselves, it's good to live a reflective life to say how much of that is truth and what do I need to work on it, but not to harbor that. Here's one of the last nuggets I'll leave in this is we have to choose to be offended. Nobody can make me be offended at somebody. I
Mm.
have to choose that. And for me to hold resentment or contempt against somebody is a cognitive decision for me. I have to decide I'm not going to move past this. I'm not going to deal with this. I'm going to hold that. And in a sense, stagnating my growth and my ability to help people, because what we learn from our past mistakes as well as our past hurts allow us to expand our abilities to navigate life with people. If we stay constrained,
Mm.
our skill set remains constraint.
I'm going to replay that because that was gold. It was a lot. Um, the I'm pausing because I'm trying to take it all in, and I want to give you permission to pause that as well. Go back and
Okay.
listen to this again. Um, Eldon just said something to me that I have said to other people, and I watch their eyes go like this when I say it. And my eyes went like this, and my heart went thump thump. Nobody can make you be offended. It's a choice. And that is so hard when you're dealing, especially with people um, who you want to love, but they're hard to love. And then in that midst, where we have the power of choice to learn from our past rather than to be a victim of our past. So where you've done this wrong, and by wrong I just mean where offense has triggered you to lash back out in war. Now we know who the enemy is because you're the enemy, and there's war going on. Peace is available. This is the kingdom journey, that love, joy, and peace are available in and through wisdom. And the wisdom, my friends, is being able to recognize that no one can make me feel anything, but I have to take the choice to learn. I'm just kind of summarizing a few things you said, Eldon. Anything you want to put a little cherry on top or emphasize something?
Yeah, well, just the last one. I would say and this is a quote, the greatest battle that any man will face is the battle within himself.
Mm.
And so if you're really wanting to identify the war's inside, and so I would encourage you to learn to deal with your weaknesses, your failures, your struggles, and realize that you can and do love yourself, and therefore you can have more grace to love those who are battling the same struggle you have. We're all in
Beautiful.
this together.
Absolutely. Eldon, thank you for joining us on the AHRK Path of Insight Line today. I hope you're back and you are a part of our community. So if you're watching this and you're a part of our Facebook community, you can reach out to Eldon through the Facebook community. That's why we have a community. He's there. You can find him. God bless you, Eldon. Thanks for the time today.
Thanks, man. Love you guys.
Take care. Uh, as I wrap that up and just kind of pull that together, Eldon left us with a thought. As you entered this insight line today, and it's about loving your enemy. At least my assumption is most of us project that enemy outward. And the invite that Eldon brought in for us to kind of take home is that we might be our greatest enemy. I mean, let that one kind of resonate, that you might be your greatest enemy in this place to be embraced, to be loved, to be known by who you are. And the best way to really learn to love yourself is to allow other people to love you. I'm going to let that one sink in too. Do you put the walls up so people don't love you? Are you afraid that if somebody really knew you, they would stop loving you? Now you know who I'm talking to is the enemy. It's the limiting beliefs in your head that believe that, gosh, no one could love me. You are your own worst enemy at that point. It's not out there. It's in here. And I want to just invite Bernard to join me on the Insight Line. Come over to the studio, Bernard, and join me when you're ready. Because in this relationship for Bernard and I, Bernard's let me see him really at some of his ugliest moments. And I've had Bernard see me at some of my ugliest moments. And in that, we actually have learned how to love ourselves. And because we've learned how to love ourselves, we become better lovers of others. We'll let our wives chime in on that if they want to. We're still a work in progress. That's definitely true. But really, in the business realm and in interpersonal experiences, we have learned how ugly we can be. Would you own that with me?
Or even more so, even more so. And I'm so excited about this topic because I'm gonna invite you to be selfish today. So love your enemy because it is so selfish. I mean, it's almost not fair because at the end of the day, when you love your enemy, you benefit exponentially.
Yeah.
It's a self-serving reality, and not in that bad selfish way, but it's one of the most powerful things. That was the biggest paradigm. Is wait a minute, how ridiculous not to do this, because guess who gains? Imagine it's a win-win, win-win every time. And when that clicks for you, and we're hoping that it would click for you today. If it hasn't clicked for you, love your enemy today. Oh my gosh, I'm free. I'm free from my enemy.
All right, so let me give us direction for our next 10 minutes. Is Bernard says, love your enemy, whether that's selfish or selfless. Love your enemy, and that's really the call that we're stepping in today.
Yes.
We're going to get into the how-to. Okay, I'm going to simplify it for you with 3 words. There are 3 how-tos of love that I believe we can bring forth to even our greatest enemy, whether that is the person coming after to kill us, that's an enemy. They're sabotaging us and tricking us, that's the external, or it's ourselves. It really is, if we're going to love the enemy, and we are the enemy. One of them we talked about yesterday that it spilled out of yesterday's conversation about Thanksgiving. That's 1/3. The other 2/3, so there's 3 things that I believe that will generate love in any situation. Okay. And that's what's required when you're going to love an enemy. You can't chase the enemy, and you can't lower your standard to play at their game. Okay. You've got to be above the line. This is the insight line. What's above the line? Thanksgiving is above the line. That's one. The second one is compassion. Compassion is above the line. You can manipulate below the line. You can be selfish in the sense that I'm loving you to get. That's not what we're talking about in love. So Thanksgiving is above the line. Compassion is above the line, where it gets into empathy. And the third one is obedience. To recognize that discipline, obedience, and this is where, Natanya, you were asking the question about boundaries. That's really where obedience and healthy boundaries come into life. I'm going to be obedient to know who I am and what I'm called to do, and I'm going to stand on the line and recognize it's not to keep you out, it's to actually help me know where I'm at home. So those 3, Thanksgiving, compassion,
and
obedience.
Below the line. I mean, obedience. Sorry.
There you go.
Well,
which one do you want to touch? Where do you want to go?
Which one don't? I want to don't touch it. You know, I mean, compassion is so challenging. And it's challenging because for a big part of what I told myself is, you don't see compassion. It's not real. There was, I was born and raised in Lebanon, Beirut during the Civil War. And so there's no compassion there.
There were some enemies there, though, weren't there?
There were some enemies. And so you look at that, and you grow up with this paradigm of you become blinded to compassion. Yeah. It's not even a concept. And then the more that and it was a big part of our relationship, every time I would react in a comical way every time Casey used the word compassion.
Comical has a little bit of sarcasm and satire in it if you get to know Bernard, but
and it was because I was like, it's not a real word. I mean, it's a funny concept. It wasn't even a fun, or it wasn't even a funny concept. But again, it's a pillar.
And so today I gave you the how-to. We're not going to get into the details of what are the 5 ways to have compassion, what are the 10 ways to increase your Thanksgiving, and what is the non-negotiable truth of obedience. If you want those, come join me on an Insight Line another day. We'll get into those things. Join me into Art Group Coaching. We can unpack those things, or just reach out. Let's do a 30-minute Zoom and talk about those things because they're personal to you. What I want to invite you to do is, just like Bernard just did, is he reflected on, where does compassion live in me? And if you noticed it took him immediately back to the roots of Lebanon and being in the midst of a civil war. Compassion doesn't move that way for me.
No.
In my story, compassion is recognizing the sick, the hurting, the struggling, and the strife in hospitals. And growing up around hospitals, contending for the life of my brother, and seeing people that were unable to walk, unable to talk, and unable to care for themselves, and having people visit them and love on them. Wow, that motivates me. That means compassion to me.
Yeah.
What does compassion show up like for you? It's 1/3 of the game to love your enemies. And compassion is a sense of empathy. It's walking in their shoes. It's seeking to understand, not be understood. All sorts of great little pithy concepts. Let's look at Thanksgiving.
I thought you were going to go to deliverance. Oh, was it
It-
deliverance
it-
or
it-
obedience?
Yeah, it was obedience. We might need deliverance in order to be obedient. So I saved it for last. We're
I
going
know.
there. I know you're avoiding
I'm
it.
pushing it out.
I sense that. So Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Bernard, how have you seen Thanksgiving gratitude? I'm gonna put it as a mindset.
Yes.
How has that shown up differently in you today than it did a decade ago, than it did last week? What,
Here's the simple part. All of what he said, you can do it today, like right now.
Yes.
5 minutes after we're finished, you're gonna all start doing it. Um, Being thankful, having a thankful mindset was a chore, but again, being obedient and being persistent removes it from a chore to a lifestyle pattern that is not a chore. And
Amen.
if it's a chore going, yeah, oh, that's right, I have to be thankful right now, then next time you have to take a longer duration to be thankful, just so you can understand the shift in your life.
Yeah.
And then once it becomes ingrained in your mind, in your lifestyle, you'll see it live out in your community, and they go, wow, you've changed. And people would tell me that all the time, you've changed. And I couldn't pin it because there were so many things changing in my life, but having a thankful mindset was one of the critical components. Again, it touched me right here.
Yep.
It wasn't that, oh, I'm gonna wait for so and so change and these people around me to change before I change. No, it was like, man, my day was better because
and as Bernard highlights that, it makes me think of rejoicing always. In Thanksgiving and in all things, these are some concepts that resonate deeply for me, just as truths, and that's really what I'm hearing you call
Yeah.
out for. It is a mindset shift. It's not work.
no.
We're not on the hunt. Where can I find something to be thankful for? If you're looking for something to be thankful for, you're looking in the wrong spot. What you can be thankful for is your last breath and your next breath. Start there. And then when you begin to see that there's challenges or things that are coming into your life, they're happening for you, so you get to be thankful for them.
And I'm going to add one more thing. This is not once I'm going to set a timer at noon. I'm going to be thankful for one thing. It's everything that you touch.
Yeah.
If you don't believe having clean water is something to be thankful for, then start right now and then see how many times you touch water touches your life. We're
And-
just talking about like some of
Yeah.
the most basic essential. You don't have to carry the water. You don't have to make sure it's clean, it's not contaminated, and you use water how many times a day? Now,
Not enough.
Not enough, and multiply that, from washing and bathing and cooking and cleaning, and be thankful for the water, and go back to watch some of the older movies about what people used to do to get clean water.
And before we go to obedience, I want to go back to compassion, because this is why it's a third, a third, a third. They are not independent silos or funnels. You don't, all right, I did Thanksgiving and now I'm going to go do compassion. In fact, what happens is the spillover is the compassion. So when you become to be very aware of how thankful you are for clean water, guess what? Your compassion will grow for those who do not have clean water. As you are thankful that you didn't have to carry the bucket, you will see somebody that is without the ability to go get clean water. And guess what? Another biblical concept here. You'll give them a cup of cold water. By giving somebody a cup of fresh, cold water, you have done the love. You have changed the world. Maybe they weren't your enemy, but in giving a cup of cold, refreshing water to somebody that could give you nothing, you have silenced or slayed the enemy inside of you. So that's how these things are all playing out together. Again, there's a thousand how-tos. We're just touching the concepts and why loving your enemies is so vital. If you keep your enemy outside the gate and you don't ever identify them, you don't see them, you've put blinders on, and you're going to stop growing. And AHRK is a lifestyle path of better choices. There is a better choice. Recognize that if, as Eldon said, if I spot it, I got it. And if you're keeping anybody outside of the gate, you're keeping that locked inside of you. All right, you ready for the last one?
Oh.
Do you remember what it is?
Studio, are we out of time?
Oh.
Can we end this right now? Who wants to touch obedience? Raise your hand if you want to touch obedience. Come on, guys.
Man.
Come on. Let's raise our hands.
So I'm going to just hit obedience and tee it up in this sense. Self-discipline is self-love. Okay, this is the enemy inside of us. Where we struggle with discipline, we struggle with love. Okay, and I'm going to let you disagree with me or agree with me, whatever you want. I just probably became somebody's enemy. Well, I don't struggle with love, but I don't have any discipline. Well, love yourself.
Yes.
Choose what's good. Choose what's right. Choose what's holy and grow in that place. It's for you. This is obedience. Obedience is not obedient to somebody else. It's obedient to the commitments and the choices you make.
Mm.
So as we look at obedience, are you pursuing an outcome? Are you pursuing a goal? And let that goal be love. Okay, so we have thanksgiving, we have compassion, we have obedience. If it's not hard, it's not uphill, you're probably not growing to get something that's worthwhile. Life is not easy, folks, but it doesn't have to be painful and difficult to resentment. For me, obedience is a commitment to be resilient. Okay, not a commitment to be resistant. Resistant means I will fight you to the end. Resilient means I will bounce back every time I get knocked down. Be committed to your own resiliency.
Love that. I love that. And I think that's the shame behind obedience. That's the other side of it is, it's either I'm going to blame others for my circumstance and continue to live my lifestyle, and therefore, what am I being obedient about? And this obedience, you're being obedient to yourself, to
Mm-hmm.
your values, and we know our values, but we cross that line and go, "Ah, man, I crossed the line again. But I was justified in that moment," and go,
Yeah.
"Oh man, that was not much of a justification." And so you BS yourself.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
Is
It's
that
clean. It's clean.
I tried to, my mouth was not moving, but it's you have to clean it up for yourself. You again, the mirror is the ugliest thing in my house. Our mirrors are the ugliest things in the house, in the office. Again, because when you look at the mirror, who are you looking at? You're looking at you. And then those choices, those things that you said, go, all right, why did I say that? Self-serving, it was mean, but they needed to hear it. Well, okay, did we say it in love? And it was that compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And then, go just forget Casey, push him out. And then it comes back.
Good. I'll give you one thread. We're going to pull through all three words, the three words today of like, what does it mean to really love my enemy? I am the enemy. I'm going to love myself. It is to have more thanksgiving in your life, to have more compassion in your life, and to have more obedience in your life. The one word that I'm going to pull through all three of those, this is not the easy word. This is why Bernard was pushing it off. It's forgiveness. Okay. Forgive yourself for anything in your past. Forgive others. And really what forgiveness means, it release the right to get revenge. All right. There's a right. When you've been wronged, you have a right to get even. But forgiveness says, I'm going to release the right to get revenge. And I'm going to step into a new mode. I'm going to heal and I'm going to restore. This is the AHRK path. Forgiveness is in each one of those. So when it comes to Thanksgiving and forgiveness, you go, I'm so thankful that I had a second chance, that I got to learn from my mistakes. When it comes to compassion, you go, I'm going to bring forgiveness to you because you might not even know that it's possible. When it comes to obedience and forgiveness, it's recognizing that being unforgiving is drinking your own poison and hoping they die. Okay. And obedience says, I'm not going to drink the poison any longer. No, I'm not going to drink it any longer. I have to forgive. Okay, so there's the theme through all three of these and really understanding how to love your enemies. It is the concept of forgiveness. I'm going to celebrate that these are not limited to Christianity. Okay, folks, I know that's my come from, but you take any world religion and you're going to find love your enemy sewn into it, and you're going to find forgiveness sewn into it. I invite you today to recognize to love yourself, to move in the path of acknowledging where you're at, healing what's hurting you, restoring what gives you hope, and then celebrating in the kingdom. This is the AHRK path. Wrap us up.
So share this right now. Share this wherever you're at. There's a share button on any of these channels that you're watching it on. Share it with your enemy, hoping that they would change and your life would be better. And again, and I say that both serious and sarcastic. I want you to share it. I want you to share it with the people that you love. Share it with your community, but also share it with those that you don't think you love. We want to change. We want people to, this is something that we want to give to our family, our friends. This is not, we're not talking to strangers. We want to change communities so we all have a like-minded reality that there's compassion in our communities. There is compassion in our lives, and it begins with you, sadly. It begins with me, sadly. And as I fight this concept of obedience, as we talk about it constantly, I look in the mirror, I go, you're almost there. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. And I'm telling you the same thing. Keep going, guys. So come back next week. Join the workshops. Join the different team building communities that we have. Join the ARC Path. You need to hear this message over and over again until it becomes permanent in your mind, because your life is going to be so much better. So we celebrate that. We celebrate you, and we thank you for watching us today.
God bless you. We'll see you again soon.